Kamsa, Javana, Narakasura, and Paundraka. Great marshals like Salva, the Vidya monkey, and Balvala, Dantavaraka, the seven bulls, Shambara, Vidurata, and Rukmi, as also great warriors like Kamboja, Matsya, Kuru, Srinjaya, and Kekaya would all fight vigorously, either with the Lord Hari directly or with him under his names of Baladev, Arjuna, Bhima, etc. And the demons, thus being killed, would attain either the impersonal Brahmajyoti or his personal abode in the Vaikuntha planets. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Jai. All manifestations in both the material and spiritual worlds are demonstrations of the different potencies of Lord Krishna. The personality of Godhead, Baladev, is his immediate personal expansion, and Bhima, Arjuna, etc., are his personal associates. The Lord would appear, and he does so whenever he appears, with all his associates and potencies. Therefore, the rebellious souls, like the demons and demoniac men mentioned by names like Pralamba, would be killed either by the Lord himself or by his associates. All these affairs will be clearly explained in the 10th canto, but we should know well that all the above mentioned living entities killed would attain salvation either by merging in the Brahmajyoti of the Lord or being allowed to enter into the abodes of the Lord called Vaikunthas. This has already been explained by Bhishmadev in the 1st canto. All persons who participated in the battlefield of Kurukshetra or otherwise with the Lord or with Baladev, etc., would benefit by attaining spiritual existence according to the situation of their minds at the time of death. Those who recognize the Lord would enter Vaikuntha, and those who estimated the Lord as only a powerful being would attain salvation by merging into the spiritual existence of the impersonal Brahmajyoti of the Lord. But every one of them would get release from material existence. Since such is the benefit of those who played with the Lord inimically, one can imagine what would be the position of those who devoutly served the Lord in transcendental relationship with him. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshulun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanyam Manobishtam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadahamayam Tadati Sva Padantikam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sari Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vikasha Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaudavani Prachalini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine. Hare Krishna. We have a very fun verse here. I'll just read it again. I'll just read it again quickly so that we can kind of get a sense for it. All demonic personalities like Pralamba, Denuka, Baka, Keshi, Aristra, Chanura, Mustika, Kuvalyapita elephant, Kangsa, Yavana, Narakashura, and Pandraka. Great marshals like Salva, Davidya monkey, and Balava, Dantavarka, the seven bulls, Shambara, Vitura, and Rukmi, as also great warriors like Kamboja, Matsya, Kuru, Srinjaya, and Kekaya would all fight vigorously, either with the Lord Hari directly or with him under his names of Baladev, Arjuna, Bhima, etc. And the demons, thus being killed, would attain either impersonal Brahmajyoti or his personal abode in the Vaikuntha planets. So thankfully, we have the pastimes of Krishna described to us by Srila Prabhupada in the Krishna book and in the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Because if we didn't, something like this would be a verse like this would be, I mean, it's impossible to understand what the actual situation is here. But there's some very practical components to this verse that we can take away from this. But also it's like we can meditate on and consider what is happening with the Lord and his pastimes by understanding these different personalities that are being described in this verse. For those of us who are in the temple, a lot of these some of these personalities are actually, I believe, yeah, they're on the walls, right? So what we hear is that there are these demons, these demonic personalities that come into this material realm. And as Prabhupada puts it here, they are, how does he put it? They're rebellious souls. And they take the form of all these like big demons. Like what's being described here, we have like Kuvalya Pita elephant. Does anyone remember the pastime of this? This is when Krishna is entering Mathura. He's coming from Vrindavan, right? He's coming from Vrindavan into Mathura as a young boy. It's him and Balaram. And as they enter, of course, King Kamsa he's got it out for Krishna at this point. And he knows, he's been told by the demigods that Krishna is this, his sister's son is going to kill him. So he's sending all of these demons out to try to kill Krishna. And his time, Kamsa's time, is about to be up because Krishna's entering Mathura. And in his entryway to Mathura, there's a giant elephant that he actually has to fight. And he ends up smashing this elephant and defeating it. And he keeps making his way in through Mathura, and he's running into all of these different demons. And really for Krishna, this is fun. Because Krishna is just like we have the tendency to want to challenge others or to fight with others. Actually, this is a perverted reflection of Krishna's, also his tendency to want to fight. So these pastimes get manifested so that Krishna can actually reveal his potency and engage in these battles. So he's coming in, he's smashing all of his opponents, and eventually also smashing King Kamsa. And these pastimes are described in the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And also Srila Prabhupada has written the Krishna book, which is you could call it a summary, although it's quite a very in-depth summary of all of the pastimes that we're hearing about here. So we could go one by one, but ultimately what we should try to do is study these pastimes of these different aspects of Krishna's energy and the demons that are trying to fight Krishna. And there's messages in them in each one of these pastimes. And in these pastimes described in the 10th canto, we can actually gain spiritual understanding and spiritual knowledge, because in one sense, from what I understand, actually, these different demons represent different demonic qualities that are actually inside of us as well. And as we gain more spiritual knowledge and spiritual understanding of ourselves, and we can get transcendental vision, we can start to see more deeply into these pastimes. And we can see how the demonic tendencies in these different demons are actually representations of contaminations that are also in our heart in the material world. And the whole goal of spiritual life is to overcome the contaminations that we are faced with having been dropped into this material world. And from millennium and millions and billions of lifetimes of trying to enjoy separately from Krishna, thinking that with these material bodies, we can find happiness. Just like the dog or the pig or the worm is also trying to find happiness in the physical body that they currently have. We are fallen into this illusion that we'll find happiness. And whatever body we end up in, we think that that's the pinnacle of enjoyment. Of course, that's when we don't have any spiritual understanding or transcendental knowledge. What transcendental knowledge gives us is a deeper understanding and another dimension to who we are and what life is about. And it allows us to see that actually, if we spend our entire life trying to fulfill the desires that are in our heart and enjoy with these physical bodies, that there's no real satisfaction or happiness in that. And coming to this understanding is such a refreshing, wonderful set of circumstances for the living entity. Because before we have that understanding, we're trying so many things and we're being left frustrated. We all have had that experience, especially those of us who are here. Obviously, you're listening to this. If you're hearing me talk right now, either online or here in the temple room, we've all had that experience where the material world didn't provide for us what we thought we really wanted. And so we tried this and we tried that. And then somehow we had the great fortune of coming in touch with Srila Prabhupada and his teachings, which are the teachings of Krishna, which have come down from Srila Prabhupada's guru and his guru and his guru, all the way up to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all the way back, Krishna himself. So we have this great fortune of coming in touch with his teaching, which gives us a completely new depth to life. And what we see here is that what's described in this purport is that actually even these demons, these rebellious personalities, we're all rebellious personalities. Actually, all of us who have found ourselves in this material world, why are we here? Because we rebelled. So if we're in this material world, we have a tendency to be rebellious. Now, some demons are much more grandiose than others. And in the modern world, the demons don't come in the form of giant elephants or, big donkeys, which, or the 7 bulls, 8-headed monsters. What we're dealing with now in Kali Yuga is the demonic mentality, actually. And really how it shows up is the demonic mentality shows up as very well-mannered and nicely placed in society. And the Hare Krishna mantra and this movement of Srila Prabhupada and the Hare Krishna movement, what it is here to do is actually, just like Krishna has destroyed these demonic personalities in his pastimes, what the Hare Krishna mantra is actually Krishna himself adventing into this Kali Yuga age that we're in to destroy the demonic mentalities and to break down these tendencies that we have, ultimately for our benefit, for us, just like these demons get the benefit as it's described in this purport. the demons that are fighting with Krishna, and these demons have done horrible things. Like actually, some of these demons have like killed babies, like, you know, killed so many babies, killed people, like destroyed whole planets practically. And on a scale that like our little, living entity, we can't even imagine the death and destruction that some of these demons have caused. Yet what's being described is that even these demons get liberation from the material existence because they come in touch with Krishna. Is that fair? I don't know. It is what it is. It's good news for us because none of us can come close to the level of demonic activity that these demons have. And we're actually, so there's, the approach to Krishna consciousness. There's very simple. Two things. Always think about Krishna and never forget it. It's the same thing said in two different ways. That's the basic, fundamental. That's it. Think about Krishna and don't forget him. Now, there's two ways to think about Krishna, right? And both will get you benefit. One of them is to think of Krishna as these demons are thinking of him, as like, Krishna, I got to kill him. I got to get him. He's like, and as we can see, these demons, they're getting liberation. They're going to Vaikuntha, the Vaikuntha planets, which the Vaikuntha planets are in the spiritual world. They're high level spiritual planets, although they're not the highest level. And the other way to think of Krishna is to think of Krishna as your object of affection and love. And of course, that's what Krishna wants from us. And that's what the essence of all life, the thing that we're all seeking after is connection and love. But not love like we think of it in the material world. That's mostly lust. That is us seeing an object and wanting to enjoy for ourselves and thinking that object is going to give us something so that we can enjoy and be happy. That's what we're lusting after. And we're in our minds, in our contaminated minds, we're thinking that's love. But actually what is described as love in the Chaitanya Charitamrita by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is wanting to satisfy the senses of Krishna. And this is counterintuitive because we think, well, if I'm trying to help satisfy someone else's senses, how can I actually find happiness in that? So it takes some faith and some decontamination of our own senses to actually get to that point of even being able to consider that as an option. So what we're trying to go after here is satisfying the senses of Krishna, changing our focus on the demonic mentality of trying to find happiness in enjoying our own senses, to dedicating our life for Krishna's enjoyment. So so going from our mentality of wanting to be the master to the mentality of being the servant. And the actual constitutional position, which means the actual, like, the constitutional position, like salt's constitutional position is to be salty, right? It's salty. Like that fire's constitutional position is to be hot and have light. I mean, that's the essence of what it is. You can't take that away from it. And the jiva, which is another way to say the soul, the jiva is a Sanskrit term for the living entity. The constitutional position of the living entity is to be a das. Das means servant. So you notice in the Hare Krishna movement, whenever someone takes initiation, they get a really cool name, and they at the end of that name, there's always the word das, D-A-S, D-A-S-A, however you want to, or dasi. female. That means servant. So my name, Shashi Shekhara Das. That's the most important part of the name. And it's like our surname. Once we're in the, it's like we're all in the family. This is our, like, excuse me, where's Mr. Das? You know, so we're all in the family, because what that is servant. Mostly, usually the names have some, I mean, always the names have some connection with Krishna, but it's always we're the servant of that name. So we're ultimately the servant of Krishna, because the constitutional position of the living entity is Jiver Sarup Hoy Nitya Krishna Das. We're the eternal servants of Krishna. And we see this manifested in the world where, again, everything that we're experiencing in this material world in some way, shape, or form is a perverted reflection of what's happening in the spiritual world. That's the only the reason why we can even kind of have a sense for it to exist in the first place. If something exists here, then it also exists in the spiritual world in some kind of different form, but the actual true form. What we're seeing here is like a shadow of the reality. And so what's happening is we're in this world and we're trying to find things to serve. Right? I mean, think about it. Like, think about your life and think about how society is played out and what values are presented in all societies as the highest value. Service to country, service to family, service to your spouse, to your job. Ask anyone in any culture, Josh. Ask anyone in any culture all around the world, and they will tell you that service to this or service to that is the highest thing that you can do in human being in their society. And from a material perspective, sure, okay, great. Serve your family, serve your country. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country, right? JFK. He served his country very well, although it didn't end very well for him. And where is he now? So what we can understand is that when we are following the propensity to serve without a transcendental understanding of who and what is worthy of being served, that is Krishna. Because Krishna, ultimately, Krishna, the word is, it actually stands for the reservoir of pleasure. So when we actually serve Krishna, we get the reciprocation that we're actually looking for. And Krishna can actually reciprocate with us because he's our best friend, our well-wisher. He's ultimately looking out for our best interest, even if we're turning our back to him. The only thing that's taking us away from him is us choosing to go away because we're going after stuff that we think is going to make us happy. And if we serve, if we allow that propensity to serve to be misguided towards our family and our society and our country, which, yes, we can still serve those aspects in our life, but we have to also recognize that by serving the highest truth, we will actually water the rest of the tree. It's like everything else gets what it needs. It's like, watering the root of the tree. That is what serving Krishna gives us. And then everything else gets taken care of from there. So what we see here in this purport is that these demons are getting liberation. And as it's described here, that depending on where their consciousness is at, even these demons, depending on where their mind is at the time of death, their destination is determined. And this is also described in the Bhagavad Gita, that depending on where our consciousness is, when we leave the body, is what determines what is the next body that we get. It determines our destination. So utilize, and the thing about that is we don't know when we're going to leave the body. So what is described is that actually we want to utilize this human form of life, which is very rare and valuable, to attain a higher level of consciousness, because in the human form of life, we have the ability to think and consider. We have a higher cognitive ability than when we are in other forms of life, animal bodies, germ bodies, tree bodies. We're not going to be able to study the Bhagavatam. And somehow or other, we have found ourselves in a very fortunate position to have this human form of life. And what is described is that in this human form of life, we can bring and elevate our consciousness so that at the time of death, we can be in a position that we can actually attain these higher levels of higher levels of consciousness, but higher levels of existence in different bodies and different planets. And it's a process of moving all the way up to the top, which is Goloka Vrindavan, the top of the spiritual world. And in that, we're actually fully engaged in the service and pastimes of Krishna eternally. And the pain and suffering that we have to experience, even in the highest planets of the material world, does not impact us there, because we are eternally full of bliss, full of knowledge. And that is the nature of the soul, actually. As a servant, the soul, the jiva, is Sat Chit Ananda, full of bliss, eternal, and full of knowledge. Again, we have manifestations of this in the physical world that we experience. And so these types of verses and these pastimes of Krishna are extremely rich and deep, and they are better when we read them and we understand them, and there's so much to them. And I would advise anyone who's listening to this or here to, if you haven't deeply studied the Krishna book and read that and are reading that, to just have that book on your bedside and just read it, because every single one of these different demons and pastimes are explained in that book. And Srila Prabhupada has, in his transcendental vision, summarized it in a way that we can actually take it in and read it in a very engaging and wonderful way. And just by reading it, we actually will gain a higher level of consciousness, which will bring us closer to the ultimate goal of life. And unlike some of the other scriptures, the Krishna book is laid out in such a way that it's like reading a story. Each chapter is like a story from Krishna. And one can spend their whole life reading it, because transcendental knowledge is not like normal material that we would read in school. Read it once and then that's it, throw the book away, sell it on eBay. Transcendental knowledge is ever fresh, because it's coming from the spring, the life source. And this is so people might be thinking, oh, well, look at all this crazy stuff. Who's got demon and elephant and donkey demons and all types of stuff? Like, what is this? Now, I've never seen anything like that. So we don't have the experience of it. So we think maybe, how can this be true, or how can this be real? This might be an objection that people would say. And sure, that's fine. One can say that. But ultimately, if we look at this and we understand, how could someone come up with all of these great pastimes and stories and have it be so deep and so sought after and respected by millions of people throughout history and withstood the test of time to actually like give people happiness and hope and connection to spirituality? Even if you wanted to say that it wasn't given by God himself, then who came up with it? Because how could someone come up with such wonderful knowledge on their own? To me, I would say it gives us, by going deep into these pastimes and understanding Christian, it gives us a deeper sense of faith, which is what we need to keep going forward and having inspiration on the path. Because if we start to lose inspiration, we can start to fall back and get pulled back into the material mindset. And that potential is always there. Even Srila Prabhupada was extremely careful around how he lived his life. Even he's at the highest level of consciousness, but still he was aware that fall down could happen for him. So what to speak of us? So by staying in touch with the message of Srila Prabhupada, by, as this verse says, and we understand from this verse that where our consciousness is at the time of death, even these demons, they were given liberation. What to speak of us? We are actually actively trying to serve Krishna. We are thinking in a way that we want to love Krishna. He will guide us and he will give us the direction that we need. We just keep moving forward. So with that, I will open it up for any questions. If anyone has any specific questions about any of the names that are in this or anything else, please speak now. And any objections or any ideas, please. Yes.
So you say that even like is it a half human, half animal that like does things?
In some cases, there are like half humans, half animals, or there's different manifestations of living entities that come out. But they are, it's like you could consider they're kind of like monsters from like they're like, for example, but she's not mentioned here, but let me see. Just trying to find someone, Pralamba, like Denuka. It was a donkey. And the donkey was a demon. Like he was like an empowered donkey.
So the concept of like
Yeah. Like they have a higher level of consciousness than a normal donkey, but it's like a demonic mentality that's powering them. So it like gives them some kind of like extra power. But in one sense, they're empowered by Krishna to fight with him. Like, because I mean, think about it. If you're the supreme being and you want to experience everything. I mean, Krishna is the supreme. He can do anything at any time. So he's establishing these demonic personalities just to give them a chance to fight. So there's many different, specific circumstances in relation to how these demons are. Like Putana. Putana was a witch that took the form, like so she was like a big monstrous witch, like a scary, like her body was like big and scary and monstrous, but she took the form of a beautiful woman and she entered into Vrindavan where Krishna was as a baby under the order of King Kamsa, who was Krishna's uncle, who wanted to kill him because he heard that Krishna, or that a child of his sister, was going to kill him. So he was afraid. So he was killing all the children in the in all of Vrindavan. So he sent this witch out to try to find. And so Putana, she transformed herself into a beautiful woman under the guise of coming into Vrindavan to to take care of the children, specifically take care of Krishna. So and they let her in, and she allowed, so Krishna knew what was going on, but as a baby, then she started feeding Krishna with her breast, and Krishna knew she was a demon, so he sucked her life air all the way out. And after he did that, she, you know, her form of a beautiful woman changed into the giant form of actually there's a picture of it. You can see like there's so many pictures as well, paintings that were made under the direction of Srila Prabhupada for all these pastimes. So, and Prabhupada said that these are windows into into reality, these paintings, that what we're seeing here in this world we think is reality, but actually it's not reality. But the paintings that we see from Srila Prabhupada's devotees are the windows into reality. But and so Putana ends this like giant, huge form that she ends up after he kills her, and so many different forms.
12 miles long.
Yeah, something. It's like some of the stuff is like, how could that be? Like she like came 12 miles long. And then Krishna like danced on her body or something, right? Like tap dancing. So each pastime itself, again, there's so much depth to every pastime, and one could like, you know, meditate on and study just a single pastime of this for their entire life, and it would be enough to take you back to Godhead. Let me say, I don't have, you know, I would say that that's probably a safe bet. Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for the class and doing it spontaneously.
Yeah.
And this subject has always fascinated me, the demons and how Krishna reciprocates with them. And in the third canto, second chapter, this is glorified by Uddhava in his conversation with Vidura. I pulled it up on the screen here. It's relevant to this. I just wanted to share it. He says, "Alas, how shall I take shelter of one more merciful than he, who granted the position of mother to the she-demon Putana, although she was unfaithful and she had prepared deadly poison to be sucked from her breast." And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, Lord Krishna accepted the motherhood of Putana because she pretended to be an affectionate mother, allowing Krishna to suck her breast. This is the important part here. The Lord accepts the least qualification of the living entity and awards him the highest reward. That is the standard of his character. Therefore, who but the Lord can be the ultimate shelter? And to me, this always gave an insight into the personality of Krishna, which is a lot different than our conditioned personalities. So Krishna is not like vengeful. He's not, you know, we talk in terms of a lot of times of like justice and like, you know, like Krishna sees things from a completely different level. He loves us unconditionally, and he wants us to come back to him, you know, and will do anything to bring us back to him. Although he accepts our free will, he gives us our free will. So we often hear in terms of like, it's the intention that counts, especially in devotional service. Like you may fail at something, but your intention was to serve Krishna. We say, well, Krishna accepted it. I went out to distribute books today, but no one accepted any books. Well, it was the intention of going out and doing it, and Krishna accepts that intention. I wanted to sing a really nice kirtan, but it just didn't come out really nice. Okay, but your intention was to offer it really beautiful. Krishna accepts it. But what if our intention isn't pure, but the physical activity is there? Here we find out with the demons is that the intention wasn't good, but they physically came in contact with Krishna. Krishna says, I'll even accept that. Even when the intention's bad, I'll accept what you are able to offer. And he accepts the physical activity that's given him. So then the next verse takes it even is even more fascinating here. So then Uddhava says, He says, I consider the demons who are inimical toward the Lord to be more than the devotees, because while fighting the Lord, absorbed in thoughts of enmity, they are able to see the Lord carried on the shoulders of Garuda and carrying the wheel weapon on his hand.
Mm.
And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada, he talks about, he says, the salvation of the demons is not because of their being devotees of the Lord, it is because of the Lord's causeless mercy. And so in this, he's like, this is even great. Like for a devotee, it's a given. And I think in the end of the purport, as you were reading, Prabhupada says, you know, if he treats the demons like this, what to speak of those who spend their life devoted to the Lord. So Uddhava was saying, like, this is even like a greater show of mercy. Of course, he's going to be favorably disposed to people that are serving him, but people that are literally trying to kill him, trying to harm him, you know, destroy him, destroy his loved ones. He's forgiving and lovingly disposed towards them. I mean, it's amazing. Now, the part of like, so some of them get liberation into the impersonal Brahma Jyoti, which isn't the goal. Because we all have a personal connection, relationship with Krishna, we can never stay in the Brahma Jyoti. But it's better than being in the material world, because at least you're free from the nature of this. Well, eventually you have to come back again, but it's like you get kind of corrected a little bit. But
it's like a hard reset.
Yeah. But he's helping them at all times.
Yes, Mataji.
So that means, you know, they just kind of merging that we don't have a personal pastime with the Lord. Since they are merging the Brahma Jyoti, is they still there eternally or just for some time?
Well, they say once you go to the Brahma Jyoti, you can be there for a very long time, but eventually you have to come back because you can't. The nature of the soul is that it has to serve and has an eternal service relationship to Krishna. So it'll never be satisfied, even in a state of like kind of this, you know, neutrality or peace or being free from material anxiety in a state of liberation. It can't just stay in a state of liberation without activity. So it may stay there for some time, but eventually it has to come back.
Yeah.
It's like you said, like a hard reset.
The eternal state of the Lord.
What's that?
Different fighting with the Lord.
These ones, in this particular case, they are, you know, we see that they have some type of connection. They all have like a backstory. Like they're all, like Kamsa has a backstory, who Kamsa actually was in a previous life. And then, you know, of course, there's the Jai Vijay, they came down for this, in the Lord's fighting pastimes.
Yeah. Some things are.
The benefit but that is actually the very the love of Krishna.
Yeah, because bhakti, one of the definitions of bhakti is favorable. You know, it has to be rendered favorably. But Krishna is still there to help even the person who's unfavorably disposed to Krishna. Krishna will still help bring that person along the path. He doesn't reject them. He doesn't send them to hell. He doesn't like, which in our mind, we think that's how, because that's the way we think. So we think that's how God must think. You know, it has to be punished, you know, it has to be. Material nature has its own laws that create.
And sometimes it's difficult for us to see from our own perspective, Krishna's plan. You know, like what Prabhu was speaking last night at the Bhakti Garden, Chaitanya Charan, right? Yeah. Said, we're looking towards the future. We're in the present looking towards the future. He's saying the way to consider it is Krishna's in the future looking to the present. So we might be encountering reversals and challenges in our life, but we can't see the big picture that Krishna sees for us. And sometimes we need to accept difficulties to break free from the anarthas that are in our hearts so that we can actually awaken that. So same thing for the demons. I mean, Krishna knows what's best for them. So, and it's for us, I think practically we can gain inspiration and hope in our own practice when we might feel like we're struggling or we're not able to reach our levels that we want to in spirituality, that Krishna's there for us, even if we make mistakes. So we can stay on the path, not be discouraged.
Following on Mataji's point, if someone is in Brahmajyoti, does the soul have chance to further progress to Golok Vrindavan, or after that, sometime that soul has to come? Just now you said by soul has come.
I don't know for sure, but I know that I've read that the soul usually comes back down. Is there the possibility of going forward? I don't know of any situations,
Yeah,
but
I can't think of any.
but I know of reading that they come back down. They say they usually come back down and engage in some type of philanthropic work because they have to be engaged in some type of activity. And they are at a level of goodness, this, Brahma Bhuta. It's a state of peacefulness. It's a state of free from all anxiety. It's a state, but there's no activity. But some of the demons go
Directly to
Vaikuntha.
Vaikuntha, yeah. Like Putana was given the position of a mother in Krishna's pastimes.
Anything from online? Okay. Thank you all for giving me an opportunity to speak. Hare Krishna. Jai. Panchakalpa Krishna Kripa Sindhu Vevacha Patita Nam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.